Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to talking about President Trump and his now infamous press conferences. In light of this ongoing health scare, the president and his people have been giving these updates to the people nearly every day for a couple weeks now. This makes sense too, since in this day and age, the president and other leaders, or even just general press teams for corporations or companies or projects or movies, well, everyone these days is opting to have their speeches and to convey their information directly to the people, usually via live streams and the internet in places like YouTube or Twitter. But this newer, more direct relaying of information strategy, which is also practiced and championed by the president, well, it's part of what's caused him to get some backlash and negative feedback too. If you hadn't already guessed, the former gatekeepers of the world's information, the mainstream media, they're none too pleased with this new style of press conference, since it of course goes around them almost completely. And in the olden days, people had to go through news channels like, say, ABC, CBS, PBS, CNN, or MSNBC, or others. And well, every year these stations lose more and more relevance. And combine that with them also being stark and overt liberals now who hate the president openly, and now it's easy to see why they're getting so triggered about things lately. This is why places like CNN have cut away from the president's press briefings completely, and it's why many on their side are pushing this BS idea that they should stop sharing the president's press conferences because it's dangerous or something else silly. They act like they're mad the president is spreading lies when really they're just angry he's going around them, and no one seems to care about the mainstream media much at all anymore. And this rivalry came to a head this week, a few days ago, when President Trump shared a zinger of a video really blasting the press corps. And Trump, being a bit of an edgelord that he is, well, he even dared to play his scathing critique of the press right in their faces during his latest press conference at the White House. We're going to check out that video and meeting today and discuss things at length later. Going to be a fun ride, needless to say, but before we get to that, let me take about 30 seconds to promote our loyal sponsors at Virtual Shield, who without their help, this show wouldn't be possible. With everyone now working from home, VPN security is now a requirement. So with more and more hackers and identity thieves on the prowl out there, if you don't have a VPN yourself that's protecting your internet traffic, now's a great time to get one. And Virtual Shield has the easiest and fastest VPN on the market, and they're offering a free 30-day trial now too. So since it's free, why not give it a try today? Help me help you, and let's all help each other. And let's all have a great, safe, secure internet experience while surfing the web as usual. Thanks for your time today, and now back to the show. Great, now let's get back to the Trump press conference. Probably the people most triggered by it were the lowlifes at CNN. This became apparent when people noticed them changing their titles on their broadcast a lot, trying their damnedest to undermine our leader, but really, they just ended up coming off as petty and weak and desperate and kind of upset or triggered. Here are the examples where CNN ran 4 different, very telling banners during the short span of about 5 minutes. The first one of them says, "Angry Trump turns briefing into propaganda session." Well, if that's your take on things, then basically anyone pushing anything publicly is so-called propaganda. My video here is me pushing propaganda in that case. And Trump's press conference is him pushing his own propaganda. And in this situation, CNN, of course, will be pushing propaganda as well, the ones who are calling this out. But I guess according to them, their information is more accurate or truthful for some reason. But we all know that's baloney. And there's also a big difference between the sides here that makes all the difference in the world. President Trump is honest and straightforward about pushing ideas and agendas he wants to make this country and Americans' lives better. And I too am open and straightforward about how I'm presenting things here. And I never deny to have a personal bias as I make my commentary videos. And this show is of course being produced from the angle of my perspective, which tends to be conservative leaning for the most part. But hack liberal news stations like CNN, they aren't straightforward like this at all. They actually pretend to be fair and balanced and neutral centrist reporters who aren't taking sides, even though we all know they're obviously liberals who side with Democrats on everything, while also siding against Trump. And that, my friends, is why they're the real bad guys here. They're the ones actually spreading propaganda too, because they're being misleading and underhanded about their presentation. The next banners then go on to say other things that seem like pure projection coming from CNN too. Obviously, the graphics guy or someone there directing him was getting really triggered, because that's the only thing that explains why they tried so hard to bash the president with 4 different lying titles. In such a short time too. For the other examples, the next one says Trump refuses to acknowledge any mistakes. Then we got one saying Trump uses task force briefing to try and rewrite history, followed by the last one which says Trump melts down in angry response to reporters he ignored. These are all especially funny because, again, they can easily and more accurately be applied to the people saying them at CNN. And sure, I know that sounds like a weak and played out no you argument, but it's also so true here I can't avoid calling it like I see it. And really the whole reason the no you thing has become its own meme is because it gets used so often like this, but that's because it needs to. And it's not because my side is being lazy and we can't think of proper counter arguments. No, it's actually because the other side, the lefties and the mainstream media, they project so much so often that we have to say no you to them a lot, like this. And another reason this happens too is because also the left-wingers often throw our attacks back at us then because they can't come up with anything original. For example, this rewriting of history claim in particular, this is actually something I said in a video entitled about 2 weeks ago. Back then the press was pretending they responded to this crisis back in January, and they said Trump didn't, even though the opposite was true. And now weeks later they're claiming the inverse, and they're saying we rewrite history, and that's based on nothing other than the fact that they saw someone accuse them of this previously. So really they're the ones doing the whole no you thing, because no you in a negative light means you're just saying no you with no basis whatsoever. Next, let's finally get to the press briefing and video we've been talking about, so we can see why CNN got oh so triggered that fateful day. Take a look at this clip.
But the reality is, comparing it to the flu, for example, it's not even close to being at that stage.
What if it is worse? Is this a moment where maybe countries put politics aside, a little bit of pride aside, and do we have U.S. officials, should U.S. professionals such as yourself get involved?
How worried should Americans be?
This is not going to cause a major issue in the United States.
All right, so what we're looking at here is the president stepped away from the speaking podium and played this prepared video for the reporters at that briefing as a way to bolster his points and positions. This is done very effectively, mostly due to the fact that the video is playing clips from the news stations themselves. Trump is using the press and the mainstream media's words and coverage against them in a true to form 4D chess style move. This first segment we just saw was clips of the media obviously downplaying the risk of this issue early on. Meanwhile, next, eventually we're going to see it was actually Trump and his team who were reacting earlier. By the way, I love when they cut to shots of the president on the sidelines here. Here he just points at the timeline on the screen a little bit while looking back at the reporters, all while wearing a half smile on his face. As he should. He won here, and he's winning and doing a great job throwing it back in their faces. Gosh darn it, we're living in the best timeline here, folks. Aside from this current health scare, things have been going well, and we've got good stories and good beats and things to go through, all things considered. We've got a leader who's smart, effective, but also sometimes humorous and not too stiff. In addition, he knows how to work the media perfectly because he's had decades of experience handling them, and it really shows here, and it's a great thing to watch.
Well, we've asked them to accelerate whatever they're doing in terms of a vaccine.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. Medicare patients can now visit any doctor by phone or video conference.
So first we see a number of announcements and precautions the president was making about a month ago, all the way back in mid-March. Now, a month might not seem like much time usually, but in this kind of health scare situation and with all these lockdowns and quarantines going on now, a month actually feels like a much longer time. Early March, we barely had anything going on here in terms of the crisis too, but things flipped very quickly that one Wednesday night. I remember it happened the week before St. Patrick's Day. I remember us all hearing multiple stories that night, and when they started canceling sports and Trump made a major travel announcement shutting things down, and even that was also the same day the world discovered actor Tom Hanks and his wife had contracted the disease as well. All of this happening at once, and that's when we all really knew this health scare was going to be serious. But as these next clips are going to show, many anti-Trumpers were still dragging their feet, all just so they could spite a president they don't like, not caring they could be endangering or overly scaring others in the process.
As there were more cases, and it was clear that it was spreading out of China, where it originated, the president took this move that he was widely criticized for by Democrats and even some Republicans at the time, which was he halted a number of flights from China. At the end of the day, it was probably effective.
This is important too because here, Trump even found quotes from a New York Times reporter who couldn't help but admit his tactics were probably effective. And while this claim seems obvious and a given in this instance and situation, but it coming from the stark anti-Trump liberals at the New York Times means it's just that much more undeniable. And this is another instance in this video where Trump is very effectively using the press's words against them, which makes it even harder for them to spin this and deny it. And that's why they've turned to this terrible tactic of saying Trump is spreading propaganda, which makes no sense since Trump is just spreading clips from the press which they made themselves. Wouldn't that mean they're making the propaganda then? Because I sure would think so, and that's because they actually do it sometimes. But in this case, actually, for once, the real truths are being brought forth thanks to the president and his skilled team of editors.
His team is on it. They've been responsive late at night, early in the morning, and they've thus far been doing everything that they can do, and I want to say thank you, and I want to say that I appreciate it.
He returns calls. He reaches out. He's been proactive.
So first here, we've got two Democratic governors who lead the two biggest liberal states in the whole country. And believe it or not, but they're both supporting and praising President Trump's reaction to things here. Him and his team clearly responded to this disaster as quickly and vigorously as possible. And this message is, again, super effective because it's coming from clips of mainstream media news stations. And also, the people talking are prominent Democrat leaders too. Trump's plan clearly is working here then, and now we can see why CNN would get so upset about all these things. It's not because this is lies or biased or fake news propaganda. No, it's because Trump is actually sharing the truth, and he's doing it in a very effective and awesome way. Basically, the liberal-run mainstream media is trying to block this truth because they don't want the people to know what's really going on. They're attempting to hide and disparage statements and clips from their own networks, all because they help and make their opponent look far better than them. And there's also an air of press trying to cover their asses here too. For handling this story so poorly, they don't want people to know they duffed it up. And combine that with them purposely withholding true information from the public for political reasons, and well, I think we can all see who's really to blame here. And we could see why CNN got so salty as well. Speaking of CNN and liberal media bias, I wanted to share one more picture with you today before we wrap things up, which has some pretty damning evidence about this whole situation. In case you were doubting that the Democrats and the press, particularly CNN, were in bed with the left-wingers, well, here's an infographic with 9 key examples of relationships of Democrats who either married or are family members with prominent network reporters. And 7 out of these 9 situations involve people who worked for the Obama administration, them being related to press people directly. I guess that solves the mystery of why Obama always had the media on his side. No wonder he never got shit for his own epidemic, the swine flu, which happened during his administration. And that's because half his staff are related to or sleeping with press corps members. And 4 of these examples tie directly back to CNN too. And for the record, not only is there no connections like this with prominent Republicans, including Trump, but also, if this was an example of Republicans having all these ties to the media, well, the liberals would surely be calling it out. If, say, half Trump's administration was working for Fox News, they would obviously be crying shenanigans about it every day. But for some reason, as we've seen time and time again recently, according to the left, it's okay when they do it. What do you guys think? Was this another great press conference and a win for the president and Americans? Do you believe the press is in fact the enemy of the people? Because that's certainly one of the many bad things that comes to mind in light of all this controversy. Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button to help support this channel, and we'll see y'all next time.